Hi everyone, welcome back. We are looking at statistical analysis. Specifically though, we are looking at the normal distribution MS5. So this is our 5th video within the normal distribution, and we are looking at converting Z-scores into actual scores. So if you remember in our 4th video or in the previous video, we looked at calculating Z-scores, and this time we are looking at turning Z-scores into actual scores. So when you are given a Z-score, when you're given the standard deviation, and when you're given the mean of all the scores, when you're given those 3 things, you can actually calculate the actual score or the actual mark instead of being given the mark. So this time we have to calculate what the mark is. So if we have a look at the blue box, we can see the definition for what a Z-score is. So we looked at that in the previous video, but a Z-score is the number of standard deviations the score is above or below the mean. And this formula here was the Z-score formula. Z-score formula. And when you rearrange this formula, or you make X, which is the score, the subject of the formula, you get this here. And this one here is the formula that we are going to use, converting Z-scores into actual scores. So this is the one we're going to use, where X is the score, which is what we're trying to find. X with the little dash on top is just the mean of X, Z is the Z-score, and S is the standard deviation. So with this formula, I actually like to write it like this. And I like to put brackets around what I'm timesing. It just makes it clearer and easier for me to see. But do what you want. Just wanted to let you know so that if you see me writing like this, it's just the exact same thing as that. So let's have a look at using this formula to convert Z-scores into actual scores. So here we go. So a class test out of 50 has a mean mark of 34, a standard deviation of 4. Mary's standardized test mark was a Z-score of negative 1.5. What was Mary's actual mark? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my formula, which is X equals the mean of X plus the Z-score times the standard deviation. Now that I've got my formula down, I'm going to write down what I know. So I need to know the mean of X, I need to know my Z-score and the standard deviation. So let's go back to the question and find this information. So here is the mean of X, so 34. Here is standard deviation, which is 4. And here is the Z-score of negative 1.5. Now I'm going to sub this and I'm going to put it into the formula. So I just did a dash. My score, which is what I'm trying to find, my actual score, equals the mean of X plus my standard deviation times, my Z-score times my standard deviation. And when you put that into your calculator, you'll get an answer of 28. So that indicates that Mary's score was 28, which was 1.5 standard deviations below the mean. So a mark of 28 out of 50 was not great. She just passed, but it is below the average. And we can check that because it's a negative, which means it's below the mean. And the mean is just the average. Let's do another question. Jordan achieved a Z-score of 2.5 for a reading test. The state mean for this reading test was 71.5 and the standard deviation was 6.4. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my formula. And I'm going to write down what I know. So Z score of 2.5. The mean was 71.5. And the standard deviation, which I wrote in the wrong part, was 6.4. There we go. My Z and my S look too similar. It's confusing me. Okay, now I can answer my questions. Question A, explain the meaning of Jordan's Z score of 2.5. So if you have a Z score of 2.5, that means that you were 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. So if you're in a test, which we are, we're in a reading test, and you're above the mean or your Z score is positive, that means that you scored above the average, which means you probably scored pretty high. You probably scored maybe like 80%, somewhere along there, which is pretty good. So explain the meaning of Jordan's Z score of 2.5. That just means that she was 2.5 standard deviations above the mean, which means she scored pretty good in this test. Question B. What mark did Jordan score in the reading test? Answer correct to the nearest whole number. So we know she scored pretty well if she got 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. We just got to figure out what mark she actually got now. So we've already done all this information. So I'm just going to sub into my formula. So my score, or Jordan's score, equals 71.5 plus my Z score, 2.5, 2.5 times the standard deviation, 6.4. And that gives you a mark of 88. So Jordan scored 88 in the reading test, which is like, that's an A. It's above 85. It's a good mark. Yeah, that's how you calculate actual scores by converting Z scores.